Therapy, a boutique in-home private pediatric speech, language, and dyslexia therapy practice serving families living in the mainline area from Ardmore to Malvern, PA. They're dedicated to helping children's speech and communication skills develop and grow as they are essential to their academic and social success. Owls Therapy offers comprehensive evaluations and devises individual therapy plans that best match your child's personal needs. They also offer all therapy in-home, provide parent and teacher training, offer classroom observations, and help with navigating school-based services. Learn more at owlstherapy.com. Hello and welcome back, everyone, to Parenting Stuff I Wish I Knew Sooner and I Want You to Know Now. I'm your host, Erica Jesper, founder of the Center for Confident Parenting and a mom who seemed to learn everything I needed to know the hard way. My guest today is my good friend, Kay, mom to 3 littles who are currently ages 5, 7, and 9. Remember that store, 5, 7, 9? That made me think of that. It was for like very, very tiny people. We are here today to just have a casual conversation. This is not an expert podcast. We are just going to chat like Kay and I always do. Kay, I was teasing you before we started that you're like my favorite fellow hot mess. Keeping it real.
Listen, if anybody wants to see what a hot mess I am, just look at my... Everybody's like, oh, your nails look so good. And I'm like, yeah, they're broken and growing out and,
yes,
can't afford to go get them done.
Exactly. Everybody needs that friend that we don't, curate anything with. And we talk about how much things suck and we keep it really real. And you are that for me. I mean, you may not be the only, but we also share our birthday. So, hey.
We do. Leo's
so
for life.
Thank you for being here. Yeah. And I was saying to you earlier when the part of your life that I've seen seems to just have constant challenges. And, I'm sure that's the case with many people, but I think you're such a strong person.
Thanks.
And I think you have a lot of real and genuine insights that you've probably gained along the way that I think our listeners may find helpful. So let's dig into all of that. And I don't have a big script or plan for us today, so we'll just kind of flow with it. So your kids are 5, 7, 9, which means at one point you had 3 kids, 4 and under. And I should tell everyone, you also have ADHD.
Yes, I do.
Paint a picture for us, Kay. What did it look like in the early days when you were managing your own challenges and had 3 little monkeys very young that still need a lot from you?
So I will tell you that throughout my entire life, I always felt like things were a little bit harder. I was a very highly emotional kid growing up. I had really huge emotional responses to things. My parents were divorced. I was being raised by a single mom who, had my younger brother was actually diagnosed with ADHD when he was 6. At the time, in the 80s, 90s, it was, so, I mean, there's so much more research out there now, but it's still, I think it's still fairly new. So, because I was a female I didn't know why it felt so tough when, I had friends in high school who could barely study for a test and be fine the next day and get an A. Whereas starting projects and making sure things were done on time, I always say that I got through school by persuading my professors and teachers to give me extensions on things because of such and such, I'm just like,
right.
Wink, wink.
You were writing your own 504 basically.
I was. I actually, I literally was. I was using my persuasiveness to, just, can you give me a little more time on that? Right. And so I actually, the truth of the matter is that I didn't actually get diagnosed with ADHD until a marriage counselor asked me the question in our first marriage counseling session. This was after I had the 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And our
Because
first session,
that's when one needs marriage counseling, right?
exactly, yeah,
it should just come along with the third.
right? I have so many thoughts, so many thoughts, so many thoughts. She's like, hey, have you ever been diagnosed with ADHD? And I said, no, doesn't everybody have ADHD?
Right.
And so it took me down the path of self-discovery. And I always describe it as this thing where it was like this like flashback, in movies when the character is here standing in present time and you just go back like into your whole life of memories, and like you kind of like shoot back to the present and you're like, oh my God, huh. Like I wonder
Well, it makes
how
sense.
different it all makes sense. And I wonder how different my life would have been, my relationships, my school, like my schooling, my college, my after college, like just all of these things. Um, and so I went to a psychiatrist and got diagnosed, and am happily medicated and caffeinated daily. Thank you very much.
Me
No shame in my
too.
game. No shame in my game. But there's so much shame that comes with it. And there's so much trial and error. I always say, when you know better, you do better.
Yep.
But the knowing without shame is so difficult. It's so difficult.
You feel like you're still working on it.
Oh, I mean, every damn day, every day. Because, just a couple weeks ago, um, I had gone away for a few days and I didn't have my medication. And I came back and, just a few days, it'll be fine. I'm fine. Like, and I come home and went right into kid time. And it was a disaster. It was a real, real disaster, for a multitude of reasons. And so I've tried to learn how to not sit in the shame of that, because
Serve
it
anyone.
doesn't help. It doesn't serve anyone, especially not your kids. So that's kind of the long and short of that. It's an everyday process. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm sure, I mean, we know how overlooked it was in general back when we were kids, but particularly even to today, through today for females. So I think a lot of women are discovering later in life. And I know a lot of them discover it when they're looking into it for their kids. And then they go, oh, wait,
Yes.
this is me. And maybe I need to look into this. And then what I hear a lot from parents is like, okay, I have it, my kid has it. And now that just makes this so much more. How am I supposed to help my
Oh,
kid get organized and stay on task and, do all these things if I'm struggling with it myself? Um, so it's a lot. Definitely a
so
lot.
much, so
Yeah,
much.
absolutely.
I think to that point, I think I've said this for a long time now, since I was diagnosed, that I think that if ADHD was actually able to be renamed
Mm.
to a certain degree, that we would be able to release some of the shame and the unknown around it. Because
Mm-hmm.
I always say with my son, who is you know not officially diagnosed by a psychiatrist, but he is.
Yeah.
We're in that whole process, and it's very, very clear he has hyperfocus.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times, what people think is a deficit, where it's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, is not a deficit at all. It's a hyperfocus. So your kid. This is what
It's a
happens with my kid.
surplus of attention
It's a
on a certain
surplus
thing.
of attention. And so the hardest thing to do with a kid, the hardest thing to do with an adult who's doing something that they want to be doing, is to get them away from
Right.
focusing on that thing. So it's like, we're in this world that we live in, entrepreneurs like you and
Yeah,
me, like
right.
we're like, yeah, like do your dream, live your passion. If you're in a shitty job, like, you know, don't quit your daydream and all that
Mm-hmm.
BS, right? And it's like, well, thanks for that advice. Are you going to give me $1 million to do my cool startup? Didn't
Right.
think so, right? So, okay, like flashback to reality. What I'm saying is that when you have even an adult who wants to be doing what fuels them and what gives them
Mm-hmm.
that dopamine hit, it's really hard to get them to stop doing it.
To shift attention, yeah.
Right. So think about that with a kid who has no skill to do
Right.
that. And so that's why it's so hard, because it's like, all right, you're going to diagnose this kid with ADHD, but guess what? It's not an attention deficit.
Right.
It's a lot of times it's a focus on, well, I want to be doing art, mom. I don't want
Yeah.
to be doing my math homework. Or I want to go play sports, mom. Or I want to go play with my Barbies. I want, whatever it is. I don't want to put my laundry away. And
I do
then
think it's poorly named.
explosion.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Exactly.
yeah, so
Plus
that's my
there's different
soapbox
types
about
of it.
that.
There are kids who are
Yes.
hyper and there are kids who do not present hyper at
Right.
all. They're just more inattentive. So I feel like
Yeah.
it, yeah, I think you're right. It should be renamed so that it doesn't conjure up, misinformation, and maybe the stigma
Yeah.
is removed.
Yeah.
And you're right. We do know a lot more about it now. I feel like there's a lot of great stuff coming out about how to navigate it, what works, what
Yeah.
doesn't. But learning it at your age, all of your habit patterns and your brain wiring, it's really challenging to undo patterns that have existed for that long. Whereas the earlier we find out, maybe the easier that is.
Yeah.
So when they were so little, in the very beginning, when you first became a parent, if you had to pick one thing, or maybe you can't narrow it down to one thing, what was the most challenging aspect of your entry into parenthood?
Ooh, okay. So, um, and I'll tie it back to the ADHD because I think that it's really, uh, again, I had already had the three children when I discovered this, diagnosis. I think my youngest, Evie, was
Good enough.
yeah, 1.5.
We
Math.
promised each other we wouldn't do math
I know we
while we
weren't doing math.
recorded.
No math. No math.
Neither of our strong suits. Let's say she was 2. Nobody knows the difference.
Yeah, she was blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so what I didn't realize was how so when I had Dominic, I was actually and sorry, should I say names? Should I not say names? Doesn't matter. I
Well,
mean,
you did, so now we know
whatever.
them.
Oh, I did. No. Yeah. I mean, you're gonna know Dominic and Evie.
Take
My
it out of your
middle,
mind.
yeah, right. My middle, I don't know. Like you'll know him for other reasons, but yeah, Dom and Evie, they're gonna be like, they're gonna be in the
Everyone
news,
will
I'm
know who
sure.
they are. Yes.
Yeah.
Lots of personality there.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, when I was with Dominic, pregnant with Dominic, I didn't know what I was having, so we didn't know if it was boy or girl. But I was supposed to be at the birth center. I was at the birth center, and I was going to do this natural birth. I was going to,
aren't we all?
like really, yeah, like I am mother. Hear me roar. Like, he was 8 days late in July. Thank you very much. I was massive. I was massive. Oh my god, I was so big. Everybody's like, "It's a girl."
You must have been so fat.
Oh my god, I was the worst. I was the worst.
We did not know each other then, and I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah, yeah. I remember I traveled like at the end for work, and like so many people were so scared because my ankles were this big.
Oh my gosh.
But like they kept doing tests. I didn't have preeclampsia. I didn't have any of that. Like my blood pressure was gold, but my ankles were this big. It was crazy. They were like, "Are you okay? Are you going to be okay? Are you all right?"
Blood pressure is gold. Ankles are tree trunks.
Yeah, I'm fine. I have cankles to start with, so I wasn't starting from a good place.
That's another thing
anyway.
we have in common.
Cankles, birthdays, I think they all come come around. So
There you
anyway,
go.
so he was 8 days late, July. They were capitated to Delco Hospital at that time. So I went for the the late ultrasound, and they were like, "Oh, hey, your fluids are low. We've got to admit you." And I'm like,
Mm, I don't want to be here in a hospital.
right. And they were like, "We can't let you leave." I'm like, "Okay, all
Oh,
right, all right." So
so
they
like
spent
scary right off the bat, and
scary,
not as planned.
not as planned. I always like to say, we plan and God laughs maniacally. Like,
Yes.
not even like a cute little giggle. It's like, like, you stupid
Right?
humans,
Why would you
like,
eat? Why would plan? Why would you even make a
what?
plan?
Like, oh, write down your birth plan. I'm like, all right, this is like sort of like manifestation, but also like, what is even
Yeah.
happening? Like, whatever. Anyway, so they tried to induce me for 48 hours, and finally they were like, we got to get this kid out. So I had a C-section, and I remember like a couple days later, we came home, and I remember one of the first few days that this will be a funny. I'll give you like a sad and a funny all at the same time. So you get the
Perfect.
sad first. So the sad part was I didn't feel like I had him. The
Mm-hmm.
C-section made me feel like I didn't actually birth him.
Right.
And my postpartum, I didn't know that I had postpartum at the time, but my postpartum was, I think, spurred on by this feeling that I wasn't his mom. Like, for some
Mm.
reason, I didn't feel like I birthed this baby that I carried for
Yeah.
so long, so heavy, and so, like, so
Yeah.
hot. It was so hot. So I really, like, I remember sitting on on my bathroom floor with the door closed,
Mm,
just sobbing. I mean, obviously hormonal,
sure.
but just really, really upset about this feeling like I did not have this kid. Like, it wasn't. So
I
I had
didn't
to,
experience that, but I could totally see how that would happen. I mean,
yeah,
technically, I'm sure that would be considered, depending how you process it, a traumatic birth experience simply because it didn't go as planned and it was a little scary and exhausting and uh
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I think people need to hear that's a thing when it doesn't go the way you visioned it. That could be processed as a trauma, even if everybody's okay. And then you don't get to go through the normal process of all, everything gets like messed up. A lot of women don't feel like bonded to their baby, no matter how they arrived, section,
well, and I'll tell you
vaginal.
that they shipped me off. Like, I got to, behind the sheet, I got to hold him.
Mm-hmm.
I got to be with him for a few minutes, but then they wheeled me up because, when you have a C-section, when you, like, it's not like a vaginal birth where when you birth it, you also release
Lose
the
everything.
placenta.
Right.
And so then, like, that releases more pitocin, so that everything kind of like gets all like tightened up.
Yep.
So I had to go up to like the third floor or something. 45 minutes it took them to get an IV in me.
Mm.
They had to get an anesthesiologist. Like, this guy comes in and he's like, "What in the actual, like, you're gonna pay me like $1,500 to like prick this woman with her IV that you guys, like, three nurses, can't do?"
Wild.
It was crazy. He was so annoyed. I remember I was so groggy, but I remember he was so annoyed.
Useless. You're all
You
useless.
guys are all useless. But that was like an hour that I was without
You're
my
losing all
kid.
those precious minutes with him. Yeah. I
It was
mean, no wonder you
awful. It was
felt basically
awful.
robbed of the
But
experience
with
that you
your
had
first
pictured
kid, you don't
with your
know.
first.
You
Right.
don't know, right? So whenever I'm like, I'm gonna give you some unsolicited advice, when I have people in my life who are newly pregnant or whatever, you know be your biggest advocate. Be your biggest advocate. Ask the questions, do all the, whatever.
Mhm.
But I will tell you the funny story about that is that the birthing of my fecal matter after the C-section was
Mm,
basically like birthing a child.
Oh my God.
So you are welcome for that, dear listeners. I literally,
Somehow, no matter who my guest is, what the topic is, we spend a lot of time talking about poop.
everybody
so,
poops.
so thank you for that.
You're
That's
welcome.
that sounds
Like
super unpleasant.
I'm weird enough that I took a picture of it
Oh my God.
because I was like, I'm pretty sure that this weighs more than my actual newborn.
Oh my
Because
goodness.
again, like when you have to go in for an emergency C-section, nobody's telling you to take the Colace,
Right.
a week, 2 weeks
Yeah.
prior so that you're
Oh
not
yeah.
all backed up from all the air and the fluids and
Yep.
nobody's telling you that. So I tried to VBAC with Leo then with my middle, and I was like popping all the Colace. I was like, God forbid
Mm-hmm.
I go for another C-section, which I did. Babies don't come out
Yeah.
of my vagina, apparently.
they
So
just
they just,
they look at that door
they
and they're like, no, that's not for me.
no, not happening.
I
Too
would like an
small.
alternate route, please.
They're like, hello? Yeah.
Oh
So
my
anyway, so
goodness.
yeah, so that was the funny to the sad is that like I'm
That's
pretty
wow.
sure I birthed a poop child. So
Yeah,
you're
people don't talk
welcome for
about,
that visual.
man, nice visual. People don't talk about that either. I did have a natural vaginal birth, not bragging. Um, and I got severely impacted once I got home. And I didn't even realize what was happening because I wasn't paying attention to me. Like I was paying attention to
Right.
this new little person and so hyper focused on him. And then one night I woke up in the middle of the night in like agony. Like I felt like I was splitting open. And it had just gone on for so long and no one was monitoring that. I didn't know to monitor it. It was, ooh, I think that was worse than my birth. We won't go
So I
into
think that the
detail,
next
but
thing that you have to do after you press like stop record is to call the manufacturers of Colace and
they're gonna do a
Mucinex
spot.
or
Yes.
whatever, or not Mucinex,
Miralax.
Miralax, not Mucinex. Don't take
Right?
that. Don't take that.
This this
Yeah,
podcast is sponsored by the makers of
sponsored by.
Colace. I love it. That's a good idea. I'll write that down.
There you go.
Write
You're
it
welcome.
down.
Yeah,
Oh
exactly.
my goodness. And then your third one, did you have to do a section again? I don't remember.
I did. I scheduled her.
3 sections.
Yeah, three C sections. I did try to VBAC with Leo. He was. I actually did go into a little bit of labor with him, and then um, and then it just I just don't dilate.
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't dilate, and I will say the one thing that like I've thought about too is that I was not. You hear a lot of women being on birth control for a really 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 long time of their life,
Mm-hmm.
like right, like they get cramps, their mom takes them to the gyno, for the first time. They're like, oh well, let's just put you on the pill, right? And then they're on the pill for years and years and years and years,
Sure.
right before they try to start to get pregnant. Well, I wasn't I wasn't ever on the pill. I mean, I
Okay.
had been on it like for maybe 3 months at some point. Thank God I didn't get pregnant. Jesus, oh my God, dodged a bullet there. All the daddy issues. I was like, I don't know, I was a little promiscuous. But no, I really I hadn't ever been on birth control. I was diagnosed with PMDD, which circles me back to
Mm.
the ADHD.
Okay.
Because what they also are now doing studies on they've done studies on is how the dopamine and levels and the deficit of dopamine and the chemical reactions are actually affect your estrogen levels. And
Oh.
so I don't know if they've done any studies. I'm sure there's something out there, but when I would wake up with these night tremors
Mm.
in high school when I really started getting my period, and I would wake up like this, like sweating, crying, like just really like I couldn't, like it was like anger, like, and
Mm.
just like these emotions. So it was the PMDD, but I think it was also the ADHD, the undiagnosed
Right.
ADHD
I
that was
haven't heard
messing
about
with
that
the
connection. That's
levels.
interesting.
And so I think
Yeah.
that spurs on a lot of the postpartum depression that females with ADHD also go through some really, really hard, because the emotional dysregulation you're already
Yeah.
maxed. And then if you're undiagnosed ADHD and you have all of these dysregulations happening,
Hmm.
it's, I think it can be a lot worse.
Yeah.
So looking back on it now, I'm like, oh,
Right. And
right.
I would say to anyone, well, now with ADHD because of what you said, but even just anyone who has struggled with whatever mood issues, depression, anxiety, anything mood related, just set up your resources and your contact
Mm.
people before the baby arrives, because like worst thing that happens is you don't need them and you're pleasantly surprised. But the best thing that happens is they're checking in with you and they're monitoring. Like if you or I had someone that had our high risk on their radar, I think our experiences could have gone, very differently.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
yeah, so just set that stuff up in advance, why don't you?
True
And if you don't
story.
need it, it's fine. Now, did you have the same feelings with your second one? So you had sections, and the first time that happened, you kind of felt like you didn't birth him, and you kind of got robbed. Did that fade with each experience? Was it always just as strong?
Um, I think so. This was 2014 that I had Dom, and I think it was like, that was almost 10 years ago, which doesn't feel like 10 years ago, but 10, like a decade, like
Yeah.
that is actually a long time ago. And I think in 2014, like around that time, like, I don't know, like 2010, 2000, like, I just felt like there was this influx of, excuse me, like hospitals are bad
Mm.
and doulas and midwives are the way to go. And like, if you're not breastfeeding, I feel
Yeah.
like it got
It
really
was
heightened.
crunchy. Very crunchy time.
It, it right? I don't know. Like it feels like the last 20 years we've gone through this like breastfeeding is amazing. And if you're not doing it, it's bad for your baby, but like then now we're like on the side of like no, fed is best
That is
or
best,
whatever,
right?
right, so like but right smack dab in the middle of that is when I felt like, well, crap, like, and that's why I tried to VBAC,
Right.
because which is about trying to have a vaginal birth after cesarean, like
Right.
nobody was telling me I couldn't. So
Right.
I was like, well, I'm going to try.
Did you feel like you wanted that because I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to ask. Were you concerned that it wasn't as good for the babies, or was it more of like, I feel like an imposter and I feel like I'm not mothering the way other people mother and I'll be judged and I'll feel bad? I'm guessing it was maybe more the latter, which sucks.
um, I think I just have always had it in my head that that the female body is so purposeful. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. That might not be the right word, but like, yes. And so,
Mm-hmm.
and then again, like that messaging of like, you have the medical system, you have this like medical system who is so, where it's been so advanced, where it's like, well, C-sections are, um, the word that I'm looking for is C-sections are, uh, we know what we're doing.
Right.
When a baby's inside the
There,
mom and there's like, the doctors don't know that
there's
female's
so many
vagina.
unknowns.
Like there's
Yeah,
so
right.
many unknowns, right? So it's
Right.
like with C-sections, it's like, no, like the mental
Right.
picture is like, no, it's surgery. It's just
Mm-hmm.
general surgery, right? And
Right.
I think that was how I felt about it. Like, well, I don't, like, this is supposed to be this magical thing that my female body can do. What the hell? Why
Yeah,
can't it do it?
for
I can
sure.
do anything. Like, why
Right.
can't I do this?
Which I think is similar. I didn't experience infertility, but I know that people have similar feelings. I'm sure there's lots of mixed feelings, but like that, okay, other female bodies can do this. What's wrong with
Right, right, right.
mine?
Yes.
Um,
And that
yeah.
can just like bury you. I mean, it can. So I think that that's why I wanted to try for the VBAC. And it just ended up that like, I was in labor and they did a couple things and then it was like, well, you're still only like 1.5 centimeters. And
Hey,
it's
you got
been
to know your
like
limits. You
a
just don't,
long
darling.
time. Yeah, exactly.
Can't be good at
So
everything.
dang it. I know, right? So, but I think the hardest part, and this, I don't know if this is going to be good content or not. I don't know. Who knows?
That's all
But
right. Keep it real.
yeah, I think the hardest part be about becoming a parent for me was not, I've always been scrappy, so it's not. I think that it was the magnifying glass that it put on my marriage
Mm, yeah.
because
Right.
the when my first arrived, it was like, all right, oh, okay. All right. Let's do it to it. Shall we? Like, let's just like we're just going to do it. And I've always been self-employed. I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always had fluctuating income. And so while we had my husband's income
Right.
at the time, I was I remember I was in the hospital bed while they were trying to induce me, working on deals and on the
Mm.
phone. And not 6 weeks later, I was out showing properties,
Yep.
selling real estate again with the carrier. And so it's a very, I think, it's an untouched population of women who, there's a lot of rights being fought for, which
Mhm.
right, absolutely, like let's fucking go.
Let's do that. Yeah.
Let's do that because we should have parental rights for both male and female, and whatever that looks like. Yes, let's fight for that. And also let's look at the entrepreneurs and the self-employed and the business owners, the female business owners who don't have a clue what they're going to do when they're
Right. Yeah.
entering
I mean,
motherhood.
I went back at 6 weeks too. Uh,
So I think that that's just a
yeah.
side note is that like it was just like, okay, here's this baby, let's go. Like we're
Right.
just we're not going to sleep, and that's okay, and we're going to
Right.
be tired and exhausted, and it's okay, and we're going to just like I'm gonna nurse. And I was just like pumping in
Right.
the car and doing what you just had to do.
Right.
um all the while it was a little t trauma to our existence as two adults.
Yeah. Yeah.
um
I don't think anyone talks enough about that evolution. It can go either way, like any little t or big T trauma. It can bring you obviously closer together and bonded for life, or it can kind of drive a wedge in between. We both experienced the latter. Another
yeah,
thing we have in common.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's probably, a whole other episode in and of itself. I'll make a note, note of that. But
oh
yeah, I
yeah,
could easily see how that would be the biggest challenge. I know for me, I felt like I was a lot more tolerant of things that maybe weren't ideal before my son arrived. Because when you're just two people, like it just didn't feel like that big of a deal. I was also a much more accommodating person. I was quiet and I wanted to make everyone around me comfortable, blah, blah. And I'm on my own therapy journey for that. Um, but once you have a baby, and
people pleasers
particularly,
101.
yes, people pleasers 101. Once you have a baby and they need so much, and I had what I would have called and still call a high need baby and toddler and child and now teenager. I just was like, yeah, we can't do what we used to do. Like, this kid needs activity, he needs to go outside. Like, he's not content. How come that's me all the time? Like, wait, no, you can't do 12 hours of what you want to do on a given day because some of the, like, this needs to be redistributed. It was definitely a big wake up call, and it was much harder to just let those things go. So you're right, it does put
Yeah.
a magnifying glass on all the things that maybe weren't ideal to begin with. And then, like you said, you're exhausted, so your ability to emotionally, to communicate productively, to work
Mm.
through things, to keep emotions, on an even keel, that's a huge challenge.
Yeah, I also think too is we I think I would like to think that it's getting better with all of the focus on mental health. The last however many years, where it's been becoming pretty clear that we're all really fucked up right now. Like,
Yes.
and in multiple different ways, and because of multiple different things that happen in our lives, and that are either unprocessed or trying to be processed and whatever. But so I'm thankful for the space that we've been entering into as a society to get people the help that they need. We're still like light years away from it being what it
For
needs to
sure.
be, but I think too we don't talk enough about how we were raised
Mm.
before we have children.
Yep.
And I said to one of my clients today, I said we were in a coaching talk, and I just said to them, I said, you know, everybody always asks this question, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Like, like big picture, big dreams, And when you have kids, I think it's like you have to ask you have to ask yourself, like, I think the in parenting and like new parents, like they get asked like, well, what kind of parent are you going to be? Like what
Yeah.
like are you going to be, like how are you going to raise this baby? Like
Mm-hmm.
are you going to do breastfeeding? Are you going to do cloth diapers? Are you going to say, no, this baby's going to be raised, running around naked, peeing everywhere. I don't know. Like, and you conjure up all these concepts, and then that baby comes, and we all end up parenting the same goddamn way we were parented,
Right.
and
It
we
was
don't
kind of
even realize
it was
it.
kind of like your birth plan, right? It
Yes.
instantly went out the window. And the same thing can happen with our parenting plan. Absolutely. Most of us come into this with intergenerational trauma, and then maybe our own childhood trauma, or even if you didn't experience trauma, just, baggage and all of that. And yeah. And then if styles don't
Long story
match,
short,
that's tough.
I yell at my children. I don't know. I know that like not a lot of people do this. I know it's very unique,
Oh, of
but
course.
I but
I
I
don't
yell
yell.
at I yell at my children. I yell at
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And that was very difficult
Mm.
because my partner was not raised in a house like that. And
Right.
so that was that was that was one of the biggest things, right?
And
That
you hadn't talked about that. You hadn't pictured what that was going to be like. It just kind of happened, and you looked at each other like, oh.
well, I think that's also one thing that my therapist, my lovely therapist, she and I are in a long-term relationship. 7 years and counting. When you find a good therapist,
Yes, hold on
keep
tight.
them. Well, what my therapist said early on is if this kid is having a meltdown, you're all sitting around at the dinner table and this kid's having a meltdown and this one's like, shitting themselves and like smearing it on the wall and like the
Been
baby's
there.
screaming, crying. Yeah. And like, you're just like in a daze and you're able to look across the table at your partner and just connect in
Mm-hmm.
some way of like, what the hell did we do?
What? What did we do and what is happening
What
right
did
now?
we do? What is happening? Like, and then hopefully that ends in a laugh or a cry and
Mhm.
a hug and like it's some sort of bid for connection there.
Yeah,
That is where you can start to build the foundation of you keeping your marriage
right.
in some sort of like
Yep.
placeholder here
Yeah.
and your relationship like and have hope that it won't crumble and burn to dust and ashes.
And I did receive
So
really good advice to talk through a lot of that stuff before our son arrived. And I, of course, said, like, yeah, I'm sure people need that. We do not. Like, we were childhood friends. We were best. Like, I basically married my best friend. I don't remember a time when I didn't know him. We knew,
mm,
our deepest, darkest secrets and fears and all of that. And I was like, we're gonna be good. Like, there's nothing that could rock this. And of course, the universe laughed maniacally, like you said earlier. So I wholeheartedly agree with you. You really have to actively maintain that and look for those bids for connection. And it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot more work when you have kids than it did before.
yeah. Well, and I want to touch on, you had asked me about talking about pregnancy loss.
Yeah.
So is this the time in the show?
Yes.
Yeah,
So
for
you had
sure.
the two boys. You were
Yes.
already sort of struggling in with that connection piece. A magnifying glass had already been put on your parenting, your
Yeah.
marriage, and then you experienced a pregnancy loss. And if I recall, it was later in the pregnancy. Whatever you
Yeah.
want to tell it, whatever you can manage to tell us about that may resonate with someone else or help someone else. Again, it's something I can't speak to, didn't experience.
Sure. Well, so I think that just on the backs of what we were just talking about, where you, we all morph into, becoming parents. I think morphs you into a different version of yourself. I don't like to say that like a lot of women, including myself, I think have felt that they lose themselves in motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because when you get to a certain point, the reason you feel like you lost yourself was because you have to go back and find yourself.
Right.
But I don't think that's it. I don't actually think that's it. What I do think is that you are morphed into a different version of who you are. And it's a lot of societal pressure that and external pressure and pressure from yourself and your partner or whatever that makes you feel like that part of yourself is gone.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's gone. It's not gone. It's just not given, it's not honored. It's not
Right.
given the space. You're not given the space when you're a new parent, when you're a new mother, to be yourself, what
Yeah.
you thought of as yourself. You are a new person. You are a
Yeah.
new version. So in that, I think that can happen too, and that feeling can happen in your marriage too, not just with parenthood. Um, so when I was Leo was 7 months, so Dominic was.
Mm-mm. You're going to try to do math again.
Oh, sorry. Thanks for catching me. Yep, we're not going to do that. We're
They're
not going to
21
do
months
that.
apart. So whatever, I don't know, let's say, what's that, 13,
So I
14?
had, yep, yep,
14 months.
absolutely. So Dominic was however old he was.
Yep, we'll say
He's
14
an
months.
asshole toddler. Let's just call it that. Let's just call it what it is. Doesn't matter what age. He was an asshole toddler. Leo was seven
Oh,
months.
wait, 28. I did it in reverse. Leo was 7 months. Tom was 28 months.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Math, no math. So I had the toddler, I had the baby. Leo was 7 months, and I got pregnant. Cool, great.
Right?
Leo was also colicky for 5 months. And everybody was like, he doesn't have acid reflux. He doesn't have acid reflux. And I was like, I was
Right.
like shaking and like, like, please,
Because
someone help me.
that in itself is traumatic. I've been
So
through
I,
that.
I and everybody's like, put him in the car. I'm like, I can't take him in the car.
Right.
It's no.
I
I have
I
videos
also
of
have a
him screaming.
2-year-old.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was I was just getting out of the tail end of the colic with him, and bam, I'm pregnant again, and it was like, holy crap! Like I don't
Mm.
know. I don't
So that was
know.
not a planned thing.
No. And I would say, like, I think when I talk about my kids, like I have so many friends who have gone through infertility, and
Mm-hmm.
that was not something that I dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
I
You have
got
the opposite problem.
I was like, stop looking at me.
don't don't
Don't
breathe around me.
don't breathe. Don't look at me. Don't just I'm going to turn my back and walk away slowly.
Right?
Like, stop,
Goodness.
stop. So yeah, so it was opposite problem, which is why I'm shocked that I wasn't a teen mother. But anyway, so
It all comes together.
so like my partner and my mother, like they were all like, you need to go see a therapist. Said therapist 7 years ago. Love you. Shout out.
Hey.
So I found my therapist when I initially got pregnant, because I was still dealing with a lot. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have 3 babies under the age
Whoa.
of 3, 2,
Yeah.
whatever that math was.
Yeah.
Right. Um, so I went to therapy, and then, after 2 healthy pregnancies, uh, I finally, with some therapy, I got okay with the idea of it. Like, I'm like, all right, I'm scrappy. We can do this. It's
Put
going to
all
be,
the mess all in one little
yeah,
section of
yeah,
life.
it's going to
Sure.
be really, really tough, but we're going to do this. And then, crazy thing is I was supposed to go on a trip. We were supposed to go on a family trip to a friend's family's house in the Caymans.
I remember that.
And I had gotten the kids' passports. It was this big thing. Like, we had like 4 families going from like my college group of friends. And I honestly was like, are you kidding me? And everybody was like, you can't
We
go.
can't have nice things.
Seriously. They were like, you can't go. And I was like, because of
Huh?
mosquitoes? Yeah, it was Zika. It was
Yeah.
Zika.
Yeah. That was a
So
tough
so
one.
that was horrific. That was so traumatic, because it was like this cool thing that we were planning for a while, for a
Yeah.
year. And people were judging, like, it was like weird, like,
Yeah.
oh, you're gonna go? And I'm like, I don't
Uh,
know.
so tough.
And then
Mm.
uh I think it was like 3 weeks before the trip, I woke up on a Saturday morning really early, and I was bleeding. And I went to the bathroom, and I was like, I don't know. I wasn't like too concerned. I was, I think, 17 weeks at that point.
Okay.
And I was like, this is strange. Um, I was like, I don't know, Rich. I was like, I think we need to go. I think we need to go. So we ended up going to the emergency room, because it was very early on a Saturday morning. And that was probably the most horrific experience of my life, was
Mm.
being in the emergency room with all of the, let's just call it like the incapacitated from the night before people,
Mm.
uh, who were ornery, and just, it was the worst 4 hours of my life.
Mm.
Um, the technician, the ultrasound technician, wasn't there for 2 hours, so we had to wait for that. Nobody was telling me anything, and so the gestation, her name was Rosie, and this gestational age, I guess. It was
Mm-hmm.
14 weeks.
Okay.
And I don't know, it was surreal. It was surreal.
I mean, you had just made peace with it, gotten a little excited, like we can do this.
Yeah. Yep.
What a
Yep.
roller coaster.
Yeah. And I think on top of that, like I think that also my partner was numb to it.
Mm.
Like we were just kind of like, okay, well, we're doing this. Like we're not going to terminate. Like we didn't even talk about that, right? Like
Right.
that wasn't even an option for us specifically. Um, and so I think he had gotten to that point too, where he was like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
So, and I, talking about this, I think also I can touch on the fact that grief is a fickle bitch.
There's the episode name.
There you go. You're welcome for that. Yeah, I think that that was the starting point of the disconnection for us.
I mean, that's just, it's so back to back to back. So I don't even, you guys didn't even have time to like catch your breath between getting through these things. There clearly was no processing time. It seems inevitable, which is like such a maybe a callous way to wrap up a relationship. But like, I don't know. I mean, could anybody have gotten through that any better? It's just so brutal.
I think I think people can, but it starts at recognizing the human condition of like
Mm.
we will hurt each other and how do we repair,
Right.
and we are also our own people and how do we reconcile that, and also I cannot get every single thing from you emotionally or physically or whatever it is, like I you are one person.
Right.
I you know, I think that that's where it starts in a
Mm.
relationship, especially a relationship where you might want to get serious with this person, start a family.
Right.
And it's all about creating that foundation of I don't even like to call it open communication, because some people can have open communication and have it go nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really it's more about it certainly is about communication with the other person about their upbringing, their trauma, their and then on top of that, subsequently it turns into how do you process that information in a non-judgmental way that allows you to connect with that person
Mm-hmm.
in a way that is not necessarily empathetic, but just understanding that those are the fibers that have woven this person,
Right.
so
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
I think that was definitely a a starting point to me grieving
Yep.
this loss and also having to have a surgery.
Sure. Another. There's so much on your body. I mean, the
Yeah,
pregnancies that did go well, the one that did not, like it just, and so back to back to back, that had to take just a huge toll physically. All we've talked about is the emotional piece, but
yeah.
there's always that too. And of course, the two things are play off of each other. They're not separate. Um,
Sorry.
yeah, it's a lot. So spoiler alert, you're separated. In case no one could see where this was going. You are currently separated.
Yes.
So solo, well, not single parenting because you're obviously sharing them, but when you have the kiddos, you're doing it yourself, which is a whole nother. So here's what I want to do for time's sake.
Yeah.
We're going to have to put a pin in it. You're definitely going to come back because each of these topics could be its own episode. I definitely want to
Ask
talk
me about my
through.
Tinder. No,
I want to talk through separation, single parenting, co-parenting after separation. But let me ask you this for today. Um, well, and obviously, so after Rosie, then how long till you then got pregnant with Evie?
That's a great question, Erica. More
Math
math.
again. Shortly after that.
Shortly after that. So, yeah, shortly after that.
Okay, we
Um,
can leave it at that.
I
It
think
just, again,
that,
it just kind of completes the roller coaster. Like, you're up, we can do this. You're down, oh, that was really awful. And then, like, okay, let's gear up again. Um,
I'm going to tell you, um, it, I have such a different experience from my friends who have
yeah.
done who have done IVF and who I have such a different experience. I really do because I all of this was like planned out in my subconscious that needed the chaos of my childhood.
Mm. Oh, that's deep. I think I like your therapist too. Maybe
Oh,
she's the one I want to have. Yeah, right? No, no,
oh, I
no.
know, I know.
Ooh,
Most people want a therapist who's not going to be like, excuse me, we talked about this on March
right.
1st,
Exactly.
2018. Excuse
According to
me.
my notes.
According to my notes. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
You didn't learn it back then, lady? No, no, no. She would never. But yeah, no, I mean, it was really like, I remember after I had Evie, or right around the time that she was a scheduled C-section. She was scheduled on my mom's oldest sister's birthday, May 8th. She is a Taurus through and through. Whew. And bull, hear me roar.
She
Um,
is.
so, um, but right around that time, or maybe shortly after I had her, I was like, yeah, why not just have four? Why not have four? You have a third, and then you're like, let's
I've
freaking
always
go.
said, as the oldest of four on one side, I've said, like, once you have three, it doesn't matter anymore. Just do
Yeah,
whatever you
yeah.
want to
They're
do.
just yeah, they're just bodies.
Yes.
They're just bodies at that point
It's
that
not
are
like that exponential leap that happens with like 0 to 1, 1 to 2,
yeah,
2 to 3. It's like
right.
all bets are off now.
Yeah, all bets are off. They basically run the show, so
Yes. You're
you can
outnumbered
just
no matter what.
you can just you can just quit. You can just quit. It's fine.
Oh my gosh.
So, but yeah, she said something to me that really shocked me into my own reality of I just wanted more of the chaos because my brain that's all it knows.
That's
It doesn't
familiar,
it's
which familiar
familiar.
can translate to safe, even if
Right.
that's not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like the brain doesn't know like good safe, between good safe and bad safe. And so here
Mm-hmm.
I am, now with three kids, and I think the scrappy like, well, let's just like keep going. Unfortunately, it just kept moving us further and further away from the big, huge, massive elephant in the room, which was our marriage. And I, there's nothing else to say other than when you let the disconnect continue to happen, uh, it's really hard to get it back,
I absolutely agree.
especially when I am having babies. I am feeling disgusting in my body.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling overly touched.
Mm-hmm.
I don't I don't I don't want you to touch me. I don't touch me.
Not for you anymore.
Not I'm like feeding these babies into existence.
Right.
Evie made my nipples bleed, which was a first. I was like, oh, this is fun.
Well, you had to throw that in there somewhere. You couldn't get away
So
without experiencing that, Jim.
yeah, right. I was
Gosh.
like, geez.
Oh my goodness.
So it just I think that there's just so much that parenting small kids does to really fuck up a marriage.
Absolutely. There's so much more I want to say about this, but let's wrap it up with
For
this
sure.
question, and then we'll do a part two or however many
Yeah.
parts we need.
I'll keep it quick. I'll keep it quick.
Uh, Along the journey we've discussed so far,
Yeah.
if a parent is listening to this and going, "Oh crap," it sounds like you're talking about what I'm feeling in my, relationship. Um, what what would you say to that parent? Like, do you think there's something you could have done earlier on, or he could have, or like, what do you wish you had just noticed it sooner? Do you wish you had done something sooner?
That's a great question. Um, hmm. So I kind of off the cuff. I mean, that's a really
Yeah,
great question.
sorry, I did it. I changed the question so you weren't
That's okay.
prepared for
That's
that.
okay. That's all right.
I
I'm
told
good. I'm
you.
good. I'm good. I'll wing it. I'll wing it. I think a lot of people out there have said that, and I am trying not to dig at the marriage counselors of the world, but a lot of people have said that once you get to the point where you are in marriage therapy, it's too late.
Mm,
I have a friend who's getting married in June, and she got engaged, I think, like a year ago now. And I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to be that like bitter, divorced,
yeah,
like
right.
weddings, marriage. Bleh. I actually I was like, I'm never getting married again. And then I love fashion, I love clothes, I love dresses, and I'm like scrolling Instagram one day, and I was like, oh my god. And I was like, I'm going to be the next Elizabeth Taylor. I'm going to have 7 different
You're
weddings.
like, I'll do it again just for the dress,
I'll
right?
do it again for the party and the dress. Let's go. Let's
Yeah.
go. Prenups, prenups, prenups. Um, but no, I said I was like, I don't want to be that friend, but I'm going to tell you, you, I think I think you should go to couples therapy before you get married.
Before there are problems.
Yeah, and I think that
Oh, before you
you
even get married.
before you even yeah, I mean, she's a little older getting married, which I think a lot of people are now older getting
Which brings
married.
its own challenges because you're more set in your own ways and you now have to confine your life with another person, right?
Right. But I think it's a real detriment to ignore the societal pressures that we are still under even in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And for the people who are in their marriages with kids, I mean, small people, small problems, like little people, little problems, big people, big problems. Like, I'm not sitting here saying that having three young kids right now is, once they get older, it's going to be so much easier.
Yeah, right.
You can attest to that, my friend.
No, it's not.
I know. I'm like,
It'll
I'm
just be
like,
different.
I know. I'm like, no, I don't want teenagers. I don't want them. What do I have to do? Do I have to go on OnlyFans to raise money for boarding school? I'll do it. I'll do it.
Oh,
But
right. Boarding school.
right? I'm like, please. But then I just, I think that if radical acceptance of who you have become,
Mm-hmm.
and if the values that you inhabit, because that's, a lot of you have to know what your values are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that my partner and I don't know that we valued the same things.
Mm-hmm.
Not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It just makes it really, really hard.
Yeah.
It just makes it really hard. So,
Especially once kids come into the picture.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so, with that, I think that the process starts with knowing what your values truly are.
Mm.
A lot of people are like, oh, my values are family, God,
Right.
love, and it's like, all right, come on, what are you, back up against the wall? What are your values? Right.
Right.
And then, if your values are very, very different from your partner's, I think you have to, it's not about sacrifice. I don't think it's about sacrifice. I think it's about acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about sacrificing.
And maybe compromise
Compromise,
where
yes,
appropriate.
where appropriate. But I think it starts with accepting who you've become, because I am certainly not the same person I was when I was 23 when I met my partner.
I remember when I was dating my first husband, and people in our circle would say, so I grew up in a religion where everyone got married incredibly young. Um, Getting married at 22, I was actually very late to the party. And everyone was like, don't, you're going to wake up one day and you are going to be a totally different person. And, the women told that to me and the men told that to him. And then we'd come back together and we'd be like, they're so dumb. What are they even talking about? We're going to wake up one day and be a completely different person. And everyone said like 25. You're going to wake up at 25 and be a totally different person. And we just thought they were all so lame. And again, we did the like, that's not going to happen to us. And I'm telling you, when I had my kid, that is literally what happened. Not a different person, a different version of the same person. And I look back in that and go like, damn it, they were exactly right.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely just even before the acceptance, I think would come the awareness of how impactful these things can be, and just knowing it's something that does need to be explored before the problems present themselves. So that's really, really useful. All right, we're gonna intermission, right?
Intermission.
There's like a Broadway show. We're gonna wrap it up here. We'll be back with a part 2. I love it. Thank you. All this is, the good, the bad, the ugly, the messy in between. Obviously, the stuff no one's talking about or showing on their curated social media profiles. That's just exactly what
listen,
I wanted
if
to
you
get
need the picture, I think I still have it in my hidden folder on my, if you need,
it could be the cover art for the episode.
It could be the cover art. I don't know. Listen, it was pretty impressive. It was pretty impressive.
It. So. I love you. We'll be back soon. I hope somebody got something out of this. Thank you, listeners, for listening and watching. I'll be back soon with more stuff that I and others wish that we had come to sooner. In the meantime, I'll leave you with my always list of stuff I learned the hardest way. Accept help when it's offered. Ask for it when it isn't. You are the expert on your child and yourself, so trust your gut. And if you need to be the squeaky wheel. Bye, everybody.
Preach it, sister. Bye, everybody. Ciao.